What is going on, SoFi fans? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. So ever since SoFi's Q2 earnings, it has just been trending down. So I want to go over some of the data points, latest updates, and where I see things going, at least in the short term. Before I get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate it. And with that, let's get right to it. So currently it is down 2.29%, a little bit low for the volume. So 12.65 million shares being traded, 64 is the average. But generally, like I always say, that's kind of normal for a Friday. But there is some abnormal activity that is happening, and I'll touch on that in a second. At the time of doing this video, there hasn't been any recent SEC filings or press releases since I've covered my last video. So kind of it's just been following the broader market, on all honesty, which is right now there is a lot of fear in the market. A lot of people anticipating that Powell is going to be raising the 25 basis points. And of course, I think that's, in my own opinion, of course, factored into the stock prices, but just still there's a lot of fear out there. But when it comes down to it, like I said, there is a lot of abnormal activity, and one of which is this. So these are all the transactions that have been occurring so far today on the secondary market, which, like I said, kind of you have to take with a grain of salt because Fridays are quieter. But 4 transactions compared to any other day, like this is yesterday, this is the day before, 4 transactions is very abnormal. But what gets even weirder is there's always been a lot of shorts in SoFi. Kind of fluctuated. I think at the high it was around 25% short interest, went down to 10 and kind of settled somewhere in between. But right now, a lot of shorts like to use dark pool, and these are all the transactions that have occurred on the dark pool over $100,000. And to note, there has been none today. So when it comes down to it, this is a typical day for the dark pool, and these are all the transactions that have occurred just yesterday. So once again, this is very, very abnormal what is happening right now. So once again, let me know you guys' thoughts on that. So with this, it's a good transition to talk on shorts. So I'll give you guys a good overview of that. And as a side note, as I've said in the past, I bring this up merely as a benchmark. I'm not saying SoFi is going to be a epic squeeze by any means, but still, again, it is what it is. But short score is currently 56, utilization is 23.32%, and as far as what shorts are doing today, they're returning 56,000 shares. So the way I interpret that and this information is with shorts returning some shares on a red day, kind of signals the fact that they are seeing this as an overreaction. Similarly, if you look at the options, but I'll touch on the options in a second, but 14.02% of the free float is being shorted, 113.04 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow is just complete pennies, so 1.23%, and that's on a annual rate. So someone who is shorting is paying basically nothing. And just to put in perspectives though, this 113.04 million shares does work out to be almost $1 billion worth of shorts out there. So pretty significant if you ask me. But when it comes down to it, like I mentioned, the options activity is also equally as optimistic. So currently there is $1.64 million in calls being purchased versus 1.14 million in puts. So based on this, people are anticipating for it to kind of bounce and trend higher. So you do get a lot of that same information, like I said, but right now, clearly the broader market and just the lack of buyers is keeping it low. But as well, if you are looking at this, so if you're optimistic, looking at the calls, it is anticipated to go between the $9 range and $9.50 for next week. But when it comes down to options activity, it does not move the stock price. It just merely is a sentiment. So once again, just be aware of that. And a couple of things to note, based on analyst ratings, one thing I have found weird is 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗛, so this David Cavalieri or whatever his name is, he last gave a rating, it looks like last month. But ever since SoFi's Q2 earnings, I was anticipating for him to reiterate his $3 target or even lower it down to $1.50, who knows. But the market seems to very much value his opinion, and I have no idea why, because he does only have a 41% success rating. But no matter what, I do feel that ever since the Q2 earnings, there was and most likely would have been a lot more analyst ratings. So hopefully that does come down the pipeline. Last being from Mizuho, $15, and it was a buy. Dan has a 50% success rating as well, so it's not too bad as well coming from a analyst standpoint. And as far as it is that time of season still, so institutions are disclosing their positions to the SEC through 13Fs, and it looks like JP Morgan backed up the bus with SoFi. So they bought 5.8 million shares in Q2. So I think that this is a pretty big accomplishment. And my reasoning is JP Morgan is a direct competitor to SoFi. So the fact that JP Morgan finally is buying into SoFi is a pretty big accomplishment. And I don't see many people talking about this. Same with Northern Trust. They backed up the bus within Q2. So 3.7 million. So clearly a lot of big money behind the scenes have been kind of seeing a lot of good value. And one thing that you can always look at is the multiples. So at the time of them buying within Q2, the multiples were just like complete garbage. So SoFi was a screaming buying opportunity. But right now, looks like the PS ratio is 4.6, 3.6 for the future. So potentially based on this, depending if someone's looking at this and kind of devaluing the future economy, then yeah, this might go down a little bit more. So I think this is also aiding in, like I mentioned, why it's going down, just a lot of broader fears. But once again, when it comes down to SoFi's business model, I liked this tweet by Data Driven Investing. So in here, he compares obviously SoFi, Upstart, and so forth. And it's just the actual quarterly revenue since SoFi became public. And as you can see, SoFi just has constantly gone up. This is exactly what you want to look for in a company, whereas Upstart has suffered quite a lot, and this is ever since Q1 2022. So SoFi has a very good business model. So this is why, as I've said, there's a lot of volatility in SoFi. You're going to see that time and time again because they're trying to disrupt one of the oldest sectors. But this is exactly what you want to look for in a company, that they are having nice natural growth. So once again, let me know you guys' thoughts on that. As far as just where I see things going. So currently looking at the momentum indicator shows number of retail investors have been getting out. Stochastic is currently at 7, a little bit more of a bearish sentiment. So I do feel that a lot of value investors are on the sidelines waiting for a good time to just jump in SoFi. So that could cause a nice jump up in the stock price. As far as the technicals and so forth, looking right here, it did transition recently from the higher to the lower percentile of the Bollinger Band, did break below that 50-day moving average, and that 50-day moving average for SoFi is a pretty big case. So once again, just kind of be aware of that. And as far as what the fib levels are talking and saying, so with it being at $8.51, it is currently between this S2 and the S1. And as you can tell, the spread on these is pretty wide. So this is exactly what I've been saying over the last couple of videos. You have to anticipate a lot of volatility. So potentially the next big support is $7.96 versus $8.87 is that next big resistance. I do feel and agree with a lot of the data points behind the scenes that this is an overreaction, that it can easily go up and probably test the $8.87 range most likely early next week. But as far as getting back to all-time highs or above 1170, I feel right now the market isn't ready. So I think it does need to have a little bit more of a broader pullback and then before it gets retested once again. So I think in reality it might be touching this S1 first, bouncing back down to this S2 depending if it holds or not. But ultimately, I do feel that the trend, and this kind of speaks volumes for SoFi's business, that when you are investing in SoFi, they are making a lot of good progress. So let me know you guys' thoughts on all that. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And if you do like my channel, want to support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below and also the comments. With that said, I appreciate you guys watching, and let's make a ton of money on SoFi.